Mercury's retrograde. The shootings in Colorado. The economy. Hi, welcome to the Noonhour. I'm glad you're here. Grab some coffee or tea, sit back, and relax with me, Noonie. This is the Noonhour. I think it's easy to forget that we all live together in a very small place, this planet that we're on, and that we really only get one planet. The events of the last week have been quite sobering for many of us, and it's reminded us that life is short and that we really need to remember those around us, and we need to pull together as a community. I think it's important anytime there's a tragedy like what happened in Colorado last week, as has been stated by spokespersons such as Anderson Cooper on CNN, Christian Bale, the actor, and others, that we need to focus on the people that were involved. I don't like using the word victim because I think it takes away the power, but that doesn't mean that I want to forget the people that died either. But rather than call them victims, I'd like to call them the people that were involved, because calling them victims takes away their personhood and makes them an object that somehow society can then stare at. As I was thinking about what to talk about this week, it occurred to me that I wanted to talk a little bit about communication. And since I've been kind of focusing on Francis Bacon, one of the things that he wrote about is called of discourse, which is, if you haven't heard it before, an old-fashioned word for conversation. And I think some of his thoughts are extremely relevant right now, particularly, oddly enough, in view of some of the kerfuffle that's recently gone on Goodreads. For those of you that aren't aware, there's been some scandal recently involving a man pursuing a minor on Goodreads in an inappropriate fashion and then badgering her even into the offline world. And there have been some very upset readers and authors getting into arguments over books and how they do their reviewing, and Goodreads has responded in somewhat questionable a fashion by reprimanding the readers and not the authors involved. So there's an ongoing fight there. And what called to mind for me watching all of this is the fact that we've really forgotten how to talk to each other. We've really forgotten the art of discourse. So today I wanted to read to you from Francis Bacon's essay on discourse. Some in their discourse desire rather commendation of wit, in being able to hold all arguments, than of judgment, in discerning what is true, as if it were a praise to know what might be said, and not what should be thought. Some have certain common places and themes wherein they are good, and want variety, which kind of poverty is for the most part tedious, and when it is once perceived, ridiculous. The most honorable part of talk is to give the occasion, and again, to guide the discussion and pass to somewhat else, for then a man leads the dance. It is good in discourse and speech of conversation to vary and intermingle speech of the present occasion with arguments, tales with reasons, asking of questions with telling of opinions, and jest with earnest, for it is a dull thing to tire, and as we say now, to jade anything too far. As for jest, there be certain things which ought to be privileged from it, namely religion, matters of state, great persons, any man's present business of importance, and any case that deserves pity. Yet there be some that think their wits have been asleep, except they dart out somewhat that is piquant and to the quick. That is a vein which should be bridled. Spare, boy, the whip, and tighter hold the reins. And generally men ought to find the difference between saltness and bitterness. Certainly he that has a satirical vein, as he makes others afraid of his wit, so he had need be afraid of others' memory. He that questions much shall learn much and content much, but especially if he apply his questions to the skill of the persons whom he asks, for he shall give them occasion to please themselves in speaking, and himself shall continually gather knowledge. But let his questions not be troublesome, for that is fit for a poser. And let him be sure to leave other men's their turns to speak. If there be any that would reign and take up all the time, let him find means to take them off, and to bring others on, as musicians used to do with those that dance too long. If you dissemble sometimes your knowledge of that you are thought to know, you shall be thought another time to know that you know not. Speech of a man's self ought to be seldom and well chosen. I knew one that was wont to say in scorn, "He needs must be a wise man, he speaks so much of himself." And there is but one case wherein a man may commend himself with good grace, and that is in commending virtue in another, especially if it be such a virtue whereunto himself pretendeth. Speech of a personal, touching a sore spot toward others should be sparingly used, for discourse ought to be as a field, without coming home to any man. I knew 2 noblemen of the west part of England, whereof the one was given to scoff, but kept ever royal cheer in his house. The other would ask of those that had been at the other's table, "Tell truly, was there never a flout or scornful jest given?" To which the guest would answer, "Such and such a thing passed." The Lord would say, "I thought he would mar a good dinner." Discretion of speech is more than eloquence, and to speak agreeably to him with whom we deal is more than to speak in good words or in good order. A good continued speech without a good speech of interlocution shows slowness, and a good reply or second speech without a good settled speech shows shallowness and weakness. As we see in beasts, that those that are the weakest in course are yet nimblest in the turn, as it is between the greyhound and the hare. To use too many circumstances ere one come to the matter is wearisome. To use none at all is blunt. That ends this podcast of the Noon Hour. For more information, please visit me on the web at acatherinenoon.com and stay tuned for the next Noon Hour.